I think you get the level of civilization you're willing to pay for.
There's a public attitude that somehow we can have all the state government we need and no new taxes.
Yeah.
We can do everything that state government is supposed to do for its people, its core mission, and no new taxes. That's horseshit. It's plain out horseshit. Some of the very same people who want their kids to go to college, who want to drive their car on nicely paved roads, who want to take the ferry to Bainbridge, who want, but they don't pay for it.
They don't like their state employees until they need them for something. Yeah. And they forget who the state employees are.
People forget that our state employees do a lot of different things. So we've got the folks that are really out there in the public, the folks like the State Patrol that people interact with, but there's also people behind the scenes that really make state government run, like the folks that work at the Department of Revenue that are helping collect the taxes that run all the services of the state. We've got all the workers that at our community colleges and our educational institutions that are helping educate our workforce, helping educate young people, helping get those degrees. And then we've got public safety folks that maybe the regular public doesn't see all the time, like folks that work at the Liquor Control Board that are helping keep our bars safe, helping make sure that minors aren't consuming alcohol, things that are important to us that we don't always see, but that make our society safe and the quality of life that we enjoy here in Washington.
When you go across the mountains in a snowstorm, Snoqualmie Pass or Chinook Pass or whatever is clear because state employees are there 24 hours a day driving those snowplows and those trucks.
I don't believe this notion that somehow public sector employees are less hardworking. In fact, I often see the opposite. People doing more with less, people who have chose this profession because it is public service, because they know they're contributing to the public good.
When you call the State Patrol, a state employee arrives at your door or wherever you're having trouble. When there's a forest fire, state employees are there to put out the forest fire. There are natural resources people, there are people who are saving the environment, they're teaching in our colleges and universities. It's a story that we need to tell more.
There are a lot of misperceptions about compensation, salaries, healthcare benefits, workload, and my experience has been nothing is further from the truth.
The average state employee in the 2011-13 budget will take home $4,500 to $5,500 less a year when you figure the 3% cut, whatever furloughs we might do, increased health care costs, increased retirement costs, and additional payments that the employees are going to have to make to the retirement fund. That's a huge hit.
State employees have to pay, and in fact, the legislature recently has made them pay more in order to help close this budget gap.
We have long ago made the corrections that might have been reasonable. We have long ago cut what might reasonably have been characterized as fat in the budget. We're past that. We're not cutting the fat anymore. We're cutting the bone and sinew of the state.
We're in a spot where we don't have a full menu of options, and we're really stuck with making a lot of cuts.
Cuts that are not driven by policy. They're driven by numerical necessity. We do not have the money. It's as if somebody showed you an investment. You checked it out, and it's no joke. It's for real. It is a very good investment. You're buying in, let's say, in a company that you know is going to go places, and you don't have the money. This is much more personal than that. This isn't an abstraction on which we might make money as investors. The investment here is in ourselves. It's in our kids. It's in our teachers, our workforce, the institutions of civil government, and we don't have the money.
We're at a spot now where there aren't any easy choices left. There's no low-hanging fruit left. I mean, there's a long list of metaphors, and all of those choices were already made, and that's gone.
The choice we face is, do you cut salaries or do you cut people? And that's a tough decision, because I worry when we cut salaries that in the future that'll make it even tougher to hire quality people that we need to run state government.
And it makes it tough to recruit and retain employees. Everyone's going to have to share in the pain. There's no way, as I said, to get out of here without everyone sacrificing. But we need to be honest about the reality, and that is public employees are already doing more with less we've already made tough decisions that impact them, and we need to be smart and fair in how we move forward.
I think our choices are between catastrophic and merely horrible. So I think there'll be some merely horrible things that happen, and it'll take the rest of my career to repair the damage we're about to do.
To cut people out of a job or to require them to take these furlough days, which are a pay cut, at a time when we should be putting more money into the economy, particularly lower income employees, people who are more likely to be buying necessities of life, and from whom the ripple effect, the economic ripple effect of those dollars being spent in the economy is much greater, because they spend more of their pay than middle-class people who are socking it away.
We really have to make sure as we craft this budget that we're not just taking care of the folks that already have resources and have support systems, have families around them that can help them, but that we keep an eye out for the folks that are the most vulnerable in our society, the people that are really hurting because of the economy and now would be hurt if we cut the services that they depend on for just basic quality of life. Not a middle-class life like most of us enjoy, but just the most basic necessities, food and shelter, and some basic health care. Those are the things we got to make sure that are protected so that everybody survives this recession, and then we can grow together and rebuild our economy.
The purpose of a government that represents the people is not to decide whether we need tax increases or decreases as a singular subject. The purpose of government is to provide a basic level of service that the private sector can't respond to or won't, or we would never want them to. There are certain basic things we say, this is the role of a government who's responsible to the citizens. So when you frame it that way, you talk about what is it we really need to provide, then the taxing question is a secondary question. How do we pay for it?
When we exempt someone from taxes that everybody else is paying, that's a little bit like a government program. You know, we're not sending them a check, but we're giving them a break from the taxes that the rest of us pay. And so as we talk about eliminating government programs, as we talk about trimming back on what state government does, I think it's fair to say, does that mean that a special tax exemption should also exist? If we're going to eliminate health care for somebody over here or an education program over here, we should also take a look at, should our largest national banks get a tax break that other Washingtonians don't get? Should folks that live outside the state when they come here pay the same sales tax as we do?
I think the public has a right to know how much money we're not collecting in the state for our schools and for health care, for example, because we're giving these preferences. And it might be that they would make that trade-off every time, but they should know. They have the right to know what those trade-offs are, and they have a right to know how much their taxes have to go up over time because somebody else over here is not paying it. When the big national banks are getting $100 million in tax exemptions for processing mortgages in our state, it means that the common taxpayer has to contribute $100 million more out of their pocket to make up for that banking industry. That's not fair.
On the incentive side, there are definitely times to do incentives, and I've voted yes for some tax incentives. I've voted no for some too. You try and identify that sweet spot where if the state makes the investment to do this, will it tip the decision so the company makes the investment, so jobs are created and good things happen in our state?
I can't think of very many occasions in the literature that say tax cuts, tax loopholes, tax preferences, you name them, actually add long-term value to the system. In the short term, you might recruit a business with one, and that there's an appropriate need for that. The competitive landscape might be such that for particularly a manufacturer, you might want to consider it, because if you lose a manufacturer, they just go. But all of these things that have been put in place for what I'll call retail sales, even when it's not at a grocery store, but we have a lot of things that are really retail, including Botox and cosmetic surgeries, and we don't think those as retail, but anytime we're giving a tax preference to somebody who sells a good or a service, that is not a good investment for the most part, because it is a demand-side economy. As long as the demand's there, somebody's going to come fill that. The last place we want to be offering preferences are for those who can't prove the business case. I can make some small exceptions for manufacturing, but for the most part, we've got to rein these things in, again, under the question of not what's good and bad about tax preferences, but what are the essential services we need to pay for? How are we going to pay for those?
Right.
And if the default is we're all going to have a fair contribution to that, then this question of tax loopholes must be reined in fast.
Our state employees are our citizens too. So just because you work for the state doesn't mean that you deserve less of a voice than your fellow citizens. So state employees should always feel ready and welcome to submit suggestions and make their views heard on the issues that the legislature is dealing with.
Wherever the membership is, make sure they're communicating with their local state legislators. And tell stories about the service that's provided and the impact that it has on regular people. Because a lot of decisions in Olympia are made at kind of an abstract level. We have to create a system to help 6.5 million people. And you want to create a system that is effective and works in everybody's regular everyday life. So hearing from regular people and frontline folks that are helping the citizens that are being served, hearing those specific concrete stories from your district is really powerful to a lot of legislators.